about whether cognitive interaction should look into transitioning to a social enterprise, or whether you should remain as a nonprofit organization. And after our presentation today, I hope you'll see the reasons why we recommended our recommendation. So let's look at the mission that we have interpreted from the information you gave us. Cognitive Interactive currently exists to empower participants to accomplish what they most desire. Yes, you are supplying programs that teach technical skills. Yes, these people are learning how to code, how to design video games, but it is so much more than the technical skill. Let's look at that level of empowerment that you're instilling in these people living with autism. Let's look at the way that you are preparing them, you are helping them with their social skills to enter the job market and to be independent. So let's not forget that is so much more than technical skills, and we're really going to try to emphasize that in our presentation to you today. So for our executive summary, our primary issue, what we're all here to talk about today, is whether you should look into transitioning to that social enterprise or remain as a nonprofit organization. Some secondary issues we've identified are if you were to continue as a not-for-profit, there are some funding issues we need to address. How are you going to continue year after year? How are you going to become sustainable? There are also some staffing issues. If you're looking to expand to 10 locations in Ontario within 3 years, you'll need the staff to support that and the resources to support that. And then lastly, there's a headquarters location. So your time in the incubator at the Gregory School of Business is up. We need to find a spot that you can operate out of and work with your 2 employees to continue to develop and foster your organization to support the autistic community of Ontario. So our recommendation is to stay true to your vision. As we go through our presentation today and discuss the analysis and the different alternatives and why we've evaluated them as such, you'll see how, through going with our recommendation, you are staying true to your vision. And then lastly, our collective impact guarantee for you is that this will provide the necessary support to the autistic community in Ontario. So again, how can you grow sustainably for that level of empowerment? That's what we're really emphasizing today, to create those employment opportunities and that feeling of independence. So for our internal analysis, we've gone with the SWOT today. Firstly, with strengths, let's identify first your relationship with Autism Ontario. They're very supportive of your initiative, and we want to leverage that relationship going forward. Secondly, there's the other partnerships that you have with the Gregory School of Business, the other local high schools that you're currently operating and running your programs out of. So the community is very supportive of the mission and the message that you're trying to get across with your organization. And also that program offering. You have programs right now dedicated to those who don't know anything about technical skills. Coding, you're learning the basics there. And you can go all the way up to that intermediate and that advanced level and learn more about video design and game design. However, some weaknesses that you've identified are those last 2 programs are only on par with the high school level. So the students that are, or clients that are participating in your programs, once they finish that advanced level, they still need to continue on to university or college to get their degree in video game design. So looking at the curriculum, how can we either address that, or how can we kind of realize that that's actually, we can work with what we have. We can work with the curriculum that is currently in place. And also those resource constraints. As I mentioned, there are financial constraints to either alternative, and also those resource constraints, such as hiring new people and working with those partnerships. So then also internally, let's look at the stakeholders. Yes, there are your facilitators you're working with. There is the Gregory School of Business that has helped your organization develop. There's you yourself. But most importantly is the autistic community and the Autism Ontario. That's what we're here to talk about today, and that is how we're going to address the primary issue. Externally, some opportunities you've identified are there are government funding grants available. There's the wage subsidy grant, and then there's also the startup grant that is multi-year and can be applied for. Also, it's quite a large target market in Ontario alone of people living with autism. There are 250,000 potential clients that you can look at targeting for your programs and expanding your programs. In terms of threats, there are other autism development programs, but what your organization offers is that technical skills is something different something more focused. The other autism programs currently in place are very broad. They do provide that level of empowerment, or they work to, but your combination of the technical and social skills that you're working towards are what really set you apart from those other programs. And then lastly is changing values. So the opportunity of government funding depends on the government supporting your mission. As years go on, values can change, and we need to see how we can make sure that the government doesn't or continues to value what you are putting forth. So for our decision criteria, we want to ensure that our recommendation will adapt to client needs. The clients are at the heart of your organization, and we want to make sure that we are benefiting them as best we can. Second, we want to appeal to diverse clients. You'll see in our recommendation how this applies and how this is very important to your organization going forward. And lastly, we want to become sustainable. And that is not just in terms of a long-term strategy, but in terms of financial stability. And Carter will walk you through the financials associated with both alternatives and explain why we have gone with what we've decided. So now Stacey will come up and walk through the alternatives. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Leah. So Melissa, you really gave us two alternatives that we really want to look through today. The first being a social enterprise and the second being a not-for-profit. So although your values will be very similar with both of them, we really just want to see what kind of organizational layout we're going to go with going forwards. So first alternative is going with a social enterprise. So this would be involved in becoming a private corporation and using those profits while still having that vision and social enterprise focus on developing the independence and the workability of people with autism. So although it would still have those values, it would change the layout of the offerings quite a bit. So there are some pros of this, is that the level of control, because it would all be coming from your private funding, you would not have to be maybe adapting it to what governments are looking for through their funding models. There's also a potential of increase in revenues. So I'll quickly skip forward and look at some of the revenues as we see here. So looking forward through 3 years, we see that there actually could be a surplus, so this could be a very financially feasible venture, while also still supporting people with autism. Lastly, there's opportunity for alliance sites. So you had mentioned that you might be looking into franchising if you went through this model. So this would give a great opportunity to service a vaster community of people with autism. There are some negatives though. As you mentioned, by going with the social enterprise, you would be focusing solely on intermediate and advanced coding skills. So instead of having a target market of ages 4 to 20, you would now be having a target of maybe 16 to 20. And because we are skipping some of those intro skills workshops, these would only be for people who are already introduced to coding and who are interested in it. So this is very different than those prior workshops we had, which would be open to anyone, maybe if they didn't even know they were interested in coding. So why this is a con that I was explaining is the smaller target market does not really reach that goal we have of giving people who maybe want independence but not solely want a tech, kind of workplace. So it would be bringing back that target that we're reaching. Another con is the capital investment. So because you would be funding it all through yourself, this would be quite a bit of money going forwards. And lastly, because it is a funding, a private model, you would not be having that opportunity for government funding that you could be if you were a not-for-profit. Our alternative 2 is instead switching to staying as a not-for-profit. So organization would be staying with that not-for-profit route and be applying for funding and not be going the social enterprise route. What this would look like is applying to have a fundraising manager who would be getting grants for us and really getting different degrees of funding and not just through a private one. In addition to this, it would also prepare different arrays of clients as we would have a very vast program offering compared to the social enterprise. So it would be reaching a wider target market of that 4 to 20 target instead of an older audience. So there are some pros of this. The first is access to government funding. So because we are a not-for-profit, it's a lot easier to receive funding from governments and from other donations because we are not now this private organization. The second is community support. So because it is a non-for-profit, there's a lot more opportunity for volunteer and support from the community going forwards. The third, of course, is that target market. So going back to the mission, it really helps a wider degree of people. So autism is a very wide spectrum, and so it really helps people from all different levels of that. A con, of course, is the level of control. So because we'd be applying for government funding, we'd really have to tailor kind of what our values and what the program offerings would be going forwards to make sure we're really fitting in those funding applications. And here's just a little income statement going forwards. We see that it still would have a surplus going forwards, and it would be actually very financially feasible given some of the grants we're receiving and an additional fundraising. So this is a really key element of this, as it would have a diversified funding model and not just one degree of funding to it. So now I'd like to walk you through the decision matrix that we've come up with for your organization trying to make these two decisions. So the first is adapting to client needs, appealing to diverse clients, and becoming sustainable, just like Leah had pointed out prior. So first, if we look at that social enterprise, we see that it does adapt to client needs because it's really giving them that level of independence and also the opportunity to have work employment going forwards. It also is sustainable, as I showed you through that income statement, and it is a financially feasible model. Unfortunately, it doesn't appeal to that diverse clients, as I was explaining, because we're really cutting out a large portion of our target market that we could be helping if we had gone with the not-for-profit instead. Looking at the not-for-profit route, we see that it checks all the boxes. The change, of course, is that it appeals to the diverse clients because we will be helping a wider degree of people. Now Carter will talk about the recommendation to do this.
Thanks, Nathan. So before we get into the details of how you might outlay this plan, let's take a bigger look at the bigger picture. Through helping the autistic people of today, you're also helping the autistic people of tomorrow. By offering them employment opportunities, you'll be able to change those stigmas or those stereotypes that autistic people might have in the current environment today. So moving a little bit more into the key aspects of what our presentation will provide for your organization, is that we're going to be hiring a fundraising manager to diversify your funding. So for not-for-profits, sometimes it might be an issue that funding only comes from one source and that you're reliant upon that funding. So through the fundraising manager, you can look to apply for government grants and possibly help out with those subsidy grants. We also want you to work with the high schools as well as with the universities and colleges to look for those outreach programs to autistic people. So in high schools, there's resource teachers, and oftentimes those resource teachers are in direct contact and know the students that they're working with, so that those people, the people with autism, can be contacted directly and directed to your program. Source volunteers, so local high school staff. These people have training already with the autistic people, as well as past clients. We want to get the past clients involved in what your organization is doing on a daily basis. Develop a job preparation program for clients. So you're providing all the training necessary, but getting into that job can be a big shift in the lifestyles and is a big key aspect to making sure that they remain independent. So here you'll see our implementation is in 3 stages. Intermediate term, from now until March 31st. So this is 3 months. Initiate contact with local schools. So you can make sure to keep contact with these resource teachers and make sure that these resources are available and that they have your information to recommend their students to you. Negotiate the room rental rate. So you're currently renting rooms from the schools for $200, which is what everybody in the community might pay. But when you're purchasing at a higher scale, as well as you're a not-for-profit, they won't be offering you a discount. So work with them on to see if you can get that discount. Begin the hiring process for the fundraising manager. So the fundraising manager will be making sure that you get all this funding. So making sure that this fundraising manager is in the operations as soon as possible is also key to the survival of your organization. Search for cognitive interactive headquarters location. So you'll need a location to operate out of for your support workers. So for the people that are offering all the support to the facilitators as well as the fundraising manager and as well as yourself. And start tracking key performance indicators. So keep track of these throughout your organization's time operating and implementing this plan. So the people hired, number of volunteers, and number of clients. Make sure that if you're not satisfied with one of them, that you make sure that an action is made to satisfy the goal of your entire organization and the goal of your mission. So short term, look for a board of directors. As a not-for-profit, you're going to need a board that is governing and is not a managing board. So making sure to have the board there to make the strategic decisions as well as strategic contacts. So there's many stakeholders within your realm. You'll need those contacts in there and maybe having a say in how the organization implements their strategy. Diversify the funding model. So the fundraising manager is there to diversify what their funding is going to be consisting of. So branching out to peer-to-peer funding as well as government grants and making sure that those grants and peer-to-peer is sustained throughout the lifetime. And hire support as needed. So along with this growing facilitators as well as growing support staff, you're going to need people to administrate all of that. So now looking to the long term, the bigger picture, and you had mentioned that you wanted to contact and grasp 5% of the entire market. That would be 12,500 people. We truly empathize and we know that this is something that is essential and you want to impact the lives of people with autism, but it may be a little too ambitious. Slow, steady growth sometimes is the best plan. So apply for those government grants, those core activities, and make sure that by your expansion, you're not expanding too fast. Evaluate your KPIs. So keep up with those KPIs and make sure that throughout the lifetime and how many people you're impacting, that you're impacting them in a meaningful way. And enter 2 to 3 test markets. So larger cities in Ontario, there's 250,000 people, as Leah had mentioned. There's a large market, and there's a large possibility for these people in the workplace. So really make sure to look to those larger cities and those larger city centers so you can grasp the most people's attention. But a key aspect of this all throughout our implementation, don't forget to celebrate those successes of the people with autism and their accomplishments throughout your programs. It is key that they see that they've accomplished something and that they can do whatever they need to. So moving a little bit to the risks and mitigation is a low client interest. So you've then identified that there's currently 2 programs with 5 individuals in each program being operated currently. It is a possibility that the clients may not be interested in coding necessarily, but we can leverage partnerships with high schools and Autism Ontario. You have all the contacts. You have all of those high schools that you can reach out to, and even those resource teachers that can recommend the students to your organization. Government grant denial. So initially, it is important to get that first $30,000 grant. So by diversifying your funding, you won't be as dependent on that funding model, and you won't be as dependent on that first $30,000 that you'll be getting. So I just want to go through a little bit more of what funding this will consist of. So as you had seen with the financials that Stacey had presented, was that with the social enterprise, there's one line from revenues. And if that could make this low client interest much more severe. And you may not be able to help the people with autism that want to get into the workplace and that are fully and able to. So let's look at the collective impact. By staying true to the client's needs, increasing the diversity of your clients, and addressing everybody, all the people with autism, and not just those who are initially interested in coding, and by introducing the topic to them, you can improve the society as a whole by offering them an ability to break those stereotypes and to make an impact on society. I'd just like to open up the floor for any questions you might have.
If we're unable to secure the government grants in year 1, what about our operations, our services has to change in order to remain financially feasible?
Could you just repeat the question one more time?
Sure. If we're unsuccessful in obtaining that government grant in year 1, what about our programming or our services? Do we have to change in order to ensure we're still financially feasible?
No, there's nothing to, it's severe for cash flow reasons. So if there's possible, actually, I'll just flip the the financials. So in the grant revenue, you can see it's 30,000. For profit reasons, it's not necessary, but for cash flows. So you won't need to change things significantly, but you may need to invest a little bit more capital into the operations of the not-for-profit, just to make sure that that cash is there, and you can certainly pay it back.
Can you go back to your stakeholder analysis? Okay, so if you are assuming that you're going to hire a fundraiser and you're going to get philanthropic support, then did you do an analysis around the fundraising that sort of that element of the not-for-profit sector, so what that environment is, and did that, I guess, not just levels of government, but the community from a philanthropic perspective, so donors. And then volunteers are also donors at the time. So you look at that, the environment of that stakeholder group, because I think they would become, based on your analysis, a key stakeholder group.
One area we really look into for that philanthropic section is the autistic community at the moment, which includes both family and friends of many people with autism. So we're assuming that a lot of people who maybe know someone or have been affected by someone who has autism know about them, that they will be the ones that peer-to-peer funding we're talking about is where really the fundraising will come from that section.
I have a question about you thought the 5% growth might be a bit ambitious, and I'm not disagreeing in any way. What kind of growth were you looking at? I know the numbers reflected a growth. Is that, how would you relate that to the 5%? What was your actual steady, so to speak?
Yeah. So for the third year, where your goal target was 5% of the market, we had projected for 20 programs with 5 individuals in each program per month. So that would be approximately 1,200 clients that you'd be serving. So it is still a large amount of clients that you could serve, but this is under those assumptions and not the 12,000.
Could you look at the financials again? So this fundraising manager is going to bring in how much here?
So in the additional fundraising is, it is assumed for the 3 months that there will be 7,500 since they will just be getting started. As well as in 2016, we're anticipating that there will be approximately 60,000. So her salary is 45, and we're anticipating that she will generate revenues of, or excess above her salary of 15,000 for the first year to get things going and getting ramping up, as well as the.
And what brought you those amounts for fundraising?
They're just based on the interest in the market in the Greater Toronto area, how much fundraising could be gathered from grants as well as from peer-to-peer fundraising.
One thing important,
thanks for outlining the vision and why our organization exists. In your executive summary, the recommendation is stay true to our vision. As a not-for-profit, how do you suggest staying true to that vision when, as a not-for-profit, we have to try to get as many grants as possible, which, as you have indicated, may mean changing programs or really tailoring things to the funding request. So I would just like to get your 2 cents on how to stay true to your recommendation of our vision while being a nonprofit and the environment that is grant getting.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of staying true to your vision, let's not get caught up in the technical skill side of it. As I mentioned, it's about that empowerment, the level of independence. When we look at testimonials of clients that have attended your programs, 9 out of 10 testimonials will say that it's the relationships they fostered in this program. It's the peers they made. They like going to this program to be with their friends, people they might not have met had it not been for your program. So if you may have to adapt your program offering to not be so tech heavy or whatever the grant requires, the funding requires. But
that is actually all the time we have for questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Grant.